In the eerie town of Arkham, Walter Gilman struggled with fever and unsettling dreams. His room in the old witch house, where Keziah Mason once lived, seemed to harbor dark secrets. Gilman was fascinated by Keziah's mysterious past and her alleged ability to traverse dimensions. He spent most of his time studying non-Euclidean calculus, quantum physics, and forbidden secrets from ancient books like the Necronomicon. As Gilman delved deeper into his research, he became increasingly obsessed with the strange angles of his room, which he believed held mathematical significance. He felt an intense connection to Keziah and her supposed gate to other dimensions. The dreams that plagued him were a mix of his studies and folklore, making him question his own sanity. Gilman's room was a hub of unsettling noises, from the creaking of hidden timbers to the scurrying of rats in the partitions. He felt like he was on the brink of uncovering a horror that lurked beyond the boundaries of life. The townspeople whispered about Keziah's presence in the old house, and Gilman couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched. As the fever took hold, Gilman's grip on reality began to slip. He became convinced that the strange angles of his room were connected to Keziah's incantations and her ability to traverse dimensions. The dreams intensified, and he felt like he was being pulled into a world beyond human experience. In his dreams, Gilman encountered a terrifying hybrid creature that filled him with panic and nausea. His dreams were a mix of plunges through colored twilight and disordered sound, where he experienced a mode of motion that was both voluntary and involuntary. The abysses he traversed were crowded with alien-hued substances, some organic and others inorganic, which were beyond description or comprehension. One category of organic objects seemed less illogical in their motions, but everything he saw was menacing and horrible. Gilman saw Brown Jenkin, a shocking little horror in his lighter dreams. The creature had a bearded human face, hellishly long teeth, and evil expectancy. It would appear from a rat hole in the corner of his room and patter towards him. He tried to stop up the hole, but the rats would gnaw away the obstruction. As the dreams continued, a nebulous blur resembling a bent old woman began to appear alongside Brown Jenkin. Gilman was disturbed by this addition, but decided it was like an ancient crone he had encountered in the dark lanes near the abandoned wharves. He argued that the fever alone was responsible for his nightly fantasies, but the visions were vivid and convincing. Gilman's mathematics skills improved, and he astonished Professor Upham with his comprehension of Riemannian equations and fourth-dimensional problems. He theorized that a man could step deliberately from the Earth to any other celestial body, given mathematical knowledge beyond human acquirement. This step would require two stages: passage out of the three-dimensional sphere and passage back to the three-dimensional sphere at another point. However, Gilman worried about his slow fever and was troubled by what his fellow lodgers said about his sleepwalking. He was often absent from his bed, and the creaking of his floor at night was remarked by the man in the room below. Gilman knew he had become a somnambulist, as his room had been found vacant twice at night, with all his clothing in place. In Arkham, Gilman, a scholar, was investigating strange occurrences. He had been experiencing sleepwalking and heard whispers of a ghost, Keziah, and a creature, Brown Jenkin. Joe Mazurewicz, a superstitious loom fixer, told Gilman about the witch's Sabbath and how it was a bad time in Arkham. Gilman was close to unlocking the secrets of the fourth dimension, but he was plagued by eerie dreams and an unknown force that seemed to be persuading him to do something terrible. As April advanced, Gilman's dreams became more vivid and disturbing. He saw the evil old woman, Keziah, and Brown Jenkin, who seemed to be urging him to meet the black man and sign a book in his own blood. Gilman knew that the name Azathoth stood for a primal evil too horrible for description. One night, Gilman found himself in a twilight abyss, surrounded by strange creatures and geometric shapes. He saw the old woman and Brown Jenkin crawling towards him, and he felt an unknown attraction pulling him towards a certain direction. When he woke up, he was back in his bed, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that something was pulling him towards the southeast. Gilman tried to resist the pull, but it only grew stronger. He saw the old woman on a desolate island, and he knew that she was the source of the evil that was haunting him. In the end, Gilman realized that the pull was coming from a point in the sky between Hydra and Argo Navis, and he knew that he had to resist its call. Gilman, a young gentleman, was haunted by strange dreams and visions, including a violet light and an old witch with a small, furry familiar. His friend Joe told him that he and others had seen the light coming from the sealed loft above Gilman's room. Gilman was panicked, feeling like he was losing his grip on reality. He suspected that he might be sleep-talking and decided to investigate further. One night, Gilman had a vivid dream in which he found himself on a fantastical balcony overlooking a bizarre city. He saw strange creatures and objects, including spiky metal figures that seemed to come to life. When he woke up, he was shaken and disoriented. The next day, Gilman felt an intense pull to go north, and he ended up in the deserted town of Innsmouth. He tried to resist the pull, but it was strong. Eventually, he returned to Arkham and went to the public library, where he met some friends who commented on his sunburned appearance. That night, Gilman returned to his garret room and was shocked to find one of the spiky metal figures from his dream on his table. He was horrified, feeling like his dreams and reality were merging. He took the figure to his landlord, who claimed that his wife had found it in Gilman's bed. Gilman was convinced that he was either still dreaming or that his somnambulism had reached new extremes. He decided to make some discreet inquiries and possibly see a nerve specialist. He also set up a trap to track his somnambulism, sprinkling flour around his room to see if he would walk in his sleep again. In a mysterious world, Walter Gilman, a student, experienced strange and terrifying events. He heard scratching and padding noises from the closed loft above his ceiling, and a cryptic pull from the north was getting stronger. In his dreams, an old woman and a fanged, furry creature appeared, and he felt the crone's claws clutching at him. He was pulled out of bed and into a strange, windowless space with a slanting floor, where he saw a tall, lean man with a shapeless robe and a book of prodigious size. The furry creature bit him, and he woke up with a pain in his wrist and a memory of the dream. Gilman tried to recall the rest of his dream, but couldn't. He saw huge prints of his neighbor on the corridor floor and realized he hadn't been sleepwalking. He decided to ask his friend Frank Elwood for help. Elwood was sympathetic and agreed that something needed to be done. He told Gilman that the French-Canadian who lived below him had spoken of nocturnal footsteps and a violet light, which made Gilman realize that his sleep-talking had been overheard. Elwood suggested that Gilman move into his room to avoid sleeping alone, and they would take the spiky image to museums and professors to identify it. Meanwhile, they would try to poison the rats in the walls. With Elwood's help, Gilman attended classes and showed the image to professors, but none could identify it. He slept on a couch in Elwood's room and was free from disquieting dreams for the first time in weeks. However, the superstitious foreigners in the building continued to spread rumors, and Gilman received a crucifix from Mazurwick's. Disrotchers reported hearing cautious steps in the vacant room above, and Paul Choinsky claimed to have heard sounds in the halls and on the stairs. But Gilman was skeptical of these reports. For 3 days, Gilman and Elwood searched for the origin of the spiky image, but without success. The image was analyzed, and 3 unknown elements of high atomic weight were found, challenging scientific curiosity. In Miskatonic University, a mysterious image was on display, defying explanation. Meanwhile, Gilman and Elwood were struggling with a rat infestation in their room. One night, Gilman waited up for Elwood, fearing the old woman from his dreams, who seemed to have appeared in real life. They discussed ancient magic and folklore, wondering if Keziah Mason had discovered secrets from forgotten eras. Gilman believed that mathematical research could unlock dimensional gates, but warned of the dangers. That night, Gilman saw a violet light and was dragged into a dark alley by the old woman and a black man. He was forced to carry a senseless form, which broke the spell. He escaped, but woke up in his old room with muddy feet and pajamas. Elwood was lost in sleep and couldn't stop him. There were strange muddy prints on the floor, including rat tracks leading out of a hole. Gilman was terrified, and things got worse when he heard about a kidnapping in Orne's gangway. A 2-year-old child had vanished, and the mother suspected Brown Jenkins' involvement. Gilman was horrified to read about a trio scene entering the gangway. a robed black man, an old woman, and a young white man in night clothes, accompanied by a tame rat. Gilman and Elwood knew they had to be vigilant to avert a monstrous and unthinkable relationship between nightmares and reality. Gilman and Elwood were puzzled by the kidnapping case, exchanging wild theories about Gilman's studies of space and dimensions. Had he slipped outside their sphere to unimaginable points? The strange events and images haunted them. The twilight abysses, green hillside, blistering terrace, pulls from the stars, black vortex, black man, muddy alley and stairs. They wondered if Gilman had unconsciously succeeded in his studies. As the night of April 30th approached, Mazurwick's warned them about the Walpurgis revels, which would be held in the dark ravine beyond Meadow Hill. Gilman wore a nickel-chained crucifix to humor Joe. Late at night, Gilman listened for the hellish chant of the celebrants, feeling an otherworldly connection. He saw Elwood asleep and tried to call out, but something closed his throat. Suddenly, he heard the distant chanting and recognized the time when Nahab and her acolyte would bear the brimming bowl. He felt enmeshed, unable to resist the call. Mathematics, folklore, the house, old Keziah, and Brown Jenkins swirled in his mind. A fresh rat hole appeared near his couch, and he saw the fanged, bearded little face. The screaming twilight abysses flashed before him, and he felt helpless. In a trance-like state, Gilman found himself in a cramped, violet-lit space with an ancient crone, a small white figure, and a monstrous, leering old woman. The crone intoned a ritual, and Gilman took the bowl, feeling a gnawing abhorrence. He dropped the bowl, and the witch's grip locked around his throat. He broke free, wrenched the knife from her claws, and sent it clattering over the edge of the triangular gulf. The witch's grip relaxed, and Gilman pulled the steel-like claws from his neck. He saw the crucifix and used it to choke the witch, sending Brown Jenkins over the edge of the gulf. As he turned away, he saw the small, lifeless body on the table, with the bowl full beside it. In his dream delirium, Gilman heard the hellish alien-rhythmed chant of the Sabbat and knew the black man must be there. Confused memories mixed with his mathematics, and he believed his subconscious mind held the angles to guide him back to the normal world. He felt sure he was in the IM. Walter Gilman's mysterious sleepwalking had taken a dark turn. His friend Elwood found him with marks on his throat and a rat bite on his ankle. Gilman's crucifix was missing, and he was half-dazed, speaking of a sign he received in response to his prayers. Dr. Malkowski was called, and he gave Gilman 2 injections, causing him to relax. However, Gilman's ears were now stone-deaf, with ruptured eardrums, as if from an intense, inhuman sound. Elwood and Gilman decided to leave the ancient, accursed house, but not before a horrific night. Rats were heard in the partition, and then Gilman began emitting inhuman screams. When Elwood rushed to his aid, he found Gilman writhing under the bedclothes, with a great stain appearing on the blankets. A large rat-like form jumped out from beneath the bedclothes and scuttled across the floor to a fresh hole. When Dr. Malkowski arrived, Gilman was dead, with a tunnel through his body, as if something had eaten his heart out. The house was abandoned, and people shunned it due to its old reputation and the new fetid odor. Health officials traced the smell to the closed spaces above and beside the eastern garret room, where a large number of dead rats were found. The house was eventually condemned and demolished. Years later, during the demolition, workmen found several disturbing objects, including human bones, rat bones, and mysterious artifacts related to black magic. One of these objects was a badly damaged monstrosity resembling an image Gilman had given to the college museum. The discovery sparked a flurry of theories and speculation, but the mysteries of Gilman's dreams and the witch house remained unsolved. In the old, abandoned building in Arkham, a massive, ancient knife was found on a deep layer of debris. But what caught everyone's attention was a strange object buried beneath the rubble. It was the crushed skeleton of a giant, diseased rat with unusual features that sparked fear and superstition. The skeleton had long, brownish hairs and tiny paws with prehensile characteristics, like a miniature monkey. Its small skull had savage yellow fangs, resembling a distorted human skull. The workmen who discovered it were terrified, but later felt relieved and grateful, lighting candles in St. Stanislaus Church.